Rick Lazio is joining us now from New York City. It is his first extended television interview since his stunning loss to Carl Palladino on September 14th. Rick Lazio, how are you?
I'm great, Liz. It's nice to be on.
So, okay, this is the first time we have seen you, and you look well, so that's good.
Thank you.
You're off the campaign trail, which gives you a little bit of rest, but it has to be, as I said, a little bit difficult for you to sit back and watch this from the sidelines.
Well, I think as someone who's been active, particularly for the last year, you're really more in an observer status now, watching as things play out across the nation and here in New York, where I have got so much invested from a personal standpoint. But it's not as if I haven't had things to do. And, you know, one of the things, obviously, when you've been out on the campaign trail for more than a year, making a lot of family sacrifices, time away from my two daughters, my wife is reconnecting with them. So there's a lot of good that comes with these things.
You know, one of the things that happened here is that you did not, when you bowed out of the race so Carl Palladino could get on the conservative line, you did not endorse him. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully for you, you're running for judgeship, and so that's how you got off the line. So you were not able to endorse him because judges are barred from political activity. Can you tell us whether you will vote for him?
I don't think I can do that, actually. I will say that when I dropped out of this race at the end of September, I expressed some pretty serious reservations about both candidates, not being substantive enough during the course of the campaign. I really think that the public, and I said this at the time, up until that time, really didn't get what they deserved, which was a full vetting of the issues by both candidates in a manner that would allow one or the other, who is ultimately going to be the victor, to claim they had a mandate for the kind of change, the fundamental change that is going to be required here in New York. So I do think that there were serious issues that I had with both candidates. You know, in the case of Andrew Cuomo, what I said at that time was I didn't see the growth strategy there, the strategy, the idea, the plan to create private sector jobs, and a willingness to create a more competitive environment for investment and job creation. And in the case of Carl Palladino, I raised questions about the same thing. A lack of substance and depth, and temperamental issues.
And you still feel
those were the issues that those were the issues that I raised at the time I stepped out of the race.
And you still feel that way? Has anything changed for you?
Well, I mean, I'm again kind of constrained by what I can say now. What I can say is that those were the thoughts I had at the time that I dropped out of the race. At the time after I lost the Republican primary but won the conservative primary. And I should have more freedom to talk a little bit more openly by tomorrow.
You know, though, you were able to put out a statement in the wake of some really controversial anti-gay comments that Carl Palladino made, and you condemned those sort of in a general sense. So it would lead me to believe that, and not to press you too hard on this, but it would lead me to believe that you really haven't changed your mind on Carl Palladino. It at least doesn't sound like it to me.
Well, I mean, I feel very strongly about the fact that the state needs to pull together, and the primary issues facing the state have always been, and I said this all along during the course of the campaign, that the primary issues are fiscal and economic issues. It's job creation. I mean, nobody is going to find a job or have a better quality of life because of an insult or because we pit one group against another. And I thought, and I still think, obviously, that those comments were well outside the boundaries of what is acceptable, and so I think it's important for people to speak up if they can, and distance themselves from comments like that. And obviously, I was not the only person.
No, you were not. I mean, there were two statewide candidates who have not endorsed Carl Palladino, Harry Wilson, the state comptroller candidate, and Dan Donovan, the state attorney general candidate. But before we get to them, let me just ask you this. Do you regret getting out of the race, and do you think things would be different had you stayed in and given Republicans who are concerned about Carl Palladino a place to go instead of maybe voting for Andrew Cuomo?
It would have been a different race for sure. I don't think it would have been likely that it would have affected the ultimate outcome in terms of who the victor might be. And my thinking on it at the time was that I did not want to create unintended consequences where people were voting for me and one candidate or the other was the net beneficiary. I mean, this is a kind of head-to-head race, and people need to make a choice. It's an incredibly critical election for the future of New York. And I thought the right and honorable thing for me to do, honestly, was to step aside, even though I had won that conservative party line. So I have no regrets at all about that. Do I regret not being the candidate? Obviously, I wouldn't have started my candidacy if I didn't believe that I was going to go the whole distance and have the opportunity to govern New York, and felt strongly about the issues, and still feel very confident, very proud about the fact that my campaign was very issues-based, and I was very specific about what I thought the solutions needed to be for New York. And at the time I got out of the race, one of my reservations about the two remaining candidates is that I didn't see that on their part, that I felt like there needed to be a higher commitment to a policy discussion. And I might add also on the part of the media, present company excluded, because I do think you do get involved in substance and issues, that there's a lot of emphasis on process and not as much emphasis on the differences on key issues, and I think that's to the detriment of New Yorkers. So
for the state, thanks for the compliment, by the way. But so for these other guys, Dan Donovan and Harry Wilson, we see a Siena poll that shows them running head to head with their Democratic opponents, even though Carl Palladino is really being trounced, according to the Siena poll, which I should say that Carl Palladino does not believe. What do you make? That means people are going to have to split their tickets. Do you really believe that voters are going to be able to go in and say, okay, I'm going to vote for Harry Wilson on independence, I'm going to vote for, Dan Donovan on conservative, I'm going to vote for Andrew Cuomo on Democrat? Do you think that voters are going to be able to do that?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly how this will play out tomorrow, but I will say that there is some historical precedent for that. Even when I ran back in 2000 for the United States Senate, I ran about 500,000 votes ahead of the top of the ticket than George Bush during a presidential year. So you did have several hundred thousand New Yorkers that voted for Al Gore and Rick Lazio. So people do make those choices. I think voters are increasingly independent, not tied to party. I remember when I was a kid, there used to be the motto, sort of vote row A all the way. Right. At the time, Republicans were on row A, and you were asked to vote straight across for all the candidates down ballot. That's a rarity now that you really see, I think, voters go in and cast those kind of straight party line ballots. It still happens, but not to the extent that it happened 20 to 25 years ago.
You are not, I know you can't speak so much about other candidates, but I'm curious if you can speak regarding the party. I mean, part of the problem here was that the party did not coalesce around you, specifically State Party Chairman Ed Cox. I mean, what is your feeling at this point, almost looking back now at the campaign as it was run? Do you believe that it was not well run by the party chairman?
Well, I know that there are a number of Republican county chairmen who said to me, I don't know how any candidate could have recovered when the state Republican chairman sought another candidate, particularly a Democrat, to come in and run against you. So I do think that the fact that historically here now speaking that the state Republican chairman was not an ally, and we could have actually pulled everything together, I think, in January. And by the way, that's not just true for me, that's true for the other statewide candidates. I mean, everybody knew early in the year that Harry Wilson was not likely to have any kind of opposition. And it seemed to me, and I said this during the course of the campaign, when I was in the campaign, I said this to Harry Wilson as well. I don't know why people just don't close ranks around you and give you the opportunity to operate not as the de facto Republican candidate, as opposed to waiting all the way until June, until the convention, the way it played out. So I do think the fact that there was a fair criticism of the leadership at the party level has had an impact on all of these races. I'll have more to say about that tomorrow.
I cannot wait to see what you are going to be saying, Rick Lazio, because it sounds like you might have quite a bit to say. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for joining us. We, of course, will be catching up with you again. Thanks very much for being here.
Great to be on again.